Scotland. A paradise for wildlife and a cameraman's dream. This country, with its rugged mountains and endless coastline, has produced a generation of the best wildlife cameramen in the world. For decades, 5 filmmakers, all rooted in Scotland, have travelled the globe to bring home incredible images, shaping our understanding of the natural world. How did these men learn the incredible skills needed for catching the natural world in action? What is it that prepared them for travelling the globe and enduring the toughest of environments? In this series, these 5 cameramen will share their extraordinary stories and the secrets of their trade. Secrets often learned from filming wildlife in the wildest parts of Scotland. But this time, the camera is on them. Our skies are alive with birds. Unlike most animals, birds can move in all directions, often very quickly, and constantly changing direction. They frequently live in remote, isolated pockets of the world, and filming them can be a unique challenge. I've always been impressed with the skill required of our cameramen to film these creatures, and there's no better exponent of this craft than John Aitchison. The islands of the South Pacific are rich in bird life. French frigate Shoals is only half a mile long, but amazingly home to over 300,000 birds. For a bird lover like John, this is paradise. He spent 2 weeks here filming young black-footed albatross as they learn to fly.
Albatrosses are fascinating birds. They live a very long time. They live in extraordinary places. They live always in very remote islands or at sea. The point of going there was that at a very specific time of year, the young albatrosses grow to the point where their wings are ready, and then over about 2 or 3 weeks, all of them go.
A young albatross learning to fly and survive on its own. But what you don't realise is that to get this shot, John was perched on a rickety makeshift scaffolding tower resting on the seabed.
I suppose it was about 5 or 6 metres high maybe, and I just stood on there every day with the camera set up, watching for the albatrosses coming out. It was only a building scaffolding tower. It wasn't built for sitting on the seabed, and I thought it would sink in on one side and tip. And so when the waves picked up a bit sometimes and were slapping underneath the planks, I was wondering about whether it was actually going to fall over quite often. So it kept me on my toes, really.
Especially as John wasn't here just to film the albatross. He was also here to film tiger sharks, eager for an easy meal.
It's one of those dilemmas you have as a cameraman. It comes up sometimes where there's a hunt, you're supposed to be there filming what happens. I can't intervene, it wouldn't make any difference anyway. human terms when one animal's hunting another, but it isn't right to see it in those terms. The sharks have a role, they have to eat, but at the same time you can't help empathizing.
John has been perfecting his craft for over 2 decades. His first big break as a cameraman came in 1994 when he filmed the wildlife of the Eithne estuary 12 miles north of Aberdeen.
It was the first programme where we could go somewhere and live there for a long time. It was 9 months in one place, living alongside this beautiful small estuary. It's the sort of place that over 9 months you can get to know almost every stone, every turn in the river, everything that happens there. It was a lovely experience, actually. It became part of us, I think, in that time.
This precious coastal environment is home to nearly half of the UK's bird species. During his time here, John was able to film some rarely seen behaviour.
The Eithne's famous for its eider ducks, and I'd never seen any film of an eider actually removing the down from its body and filling the nest. We had no idea what it even looked like. And after really quite a long time in a hide, the duck that I was filming then did this. She sort of stropped her breast and plucked out this amazing down. It just fluffed up into this beautiful cloud of grey down. It was such an intimate moment. She was doing this delicate thing, and I was right by her. I was probably 6 or 7 feet away. She didn't mind at all. She was oblivious to me in my hide. It was wonderful. It was such a revelation.
Working in Aberdeenshire made John decide to move north of the border permanently. He chose to make his home in Argyll on the west coast, surrounded by dramatic landscapes and abundant wildlife.
Scotland just had everything that I was hoping, really. It's got such fantastic wildlife. It's quiet. It's beautiful. For a wildlife filmmaker, you can't do better. I think living close to nature is crucial for me, really. It resets my balance. Being able to go outside, see what the weather's doing, see what the tide's doing, hear the geese going over. I've very often found film ideas just by being here.
Over the years, John has made several short films about his home and how it inspires him.
It was the wildness of this landscape that attracted us to it. We found it exhilarating and new because, of course, we had no history here at first. But our neighbours did, and 2 in particular shared their love of this place with us. Every part of it meant something to them, had some memory attached. They told us all the best wild things they'd ever seen here. The moments which gave them joy.
With so much wildlife on his doorstep, John always has his camera at the ready. There is one sleek, secretive creature he particularly likes to film. The otter.
I love filming otters. They're just the most beautiful animals, and they're always interesting. They're very clever. They play a great deal. Otters are quite difficult to spot, but when you get your eye in, you get better at it. I didn't know I was there. The wind was ideal. It's just blowing my scent away. And the cub was very small. This is about the second smallest cub I've ever seen here. So I'm really pleased.
A close friend of John's, who lives nearby, is fellow wildlife cameraman Mark Smith. His busy schedule takes him all around the globe, but like John, Mark chose to base himself on the west coast of Scotland.
Here in Argyll, the landscape is just beautiful on a day like this. You've got mist rising off the loch. For me, you come back from often pretty hard trips, and you're able to just relax in this place.
A particularly taxing trip for Mark came whilst filming one of the world's rarest birds of prey, the striated caracara. More commonly known as Johnny Rook, they are found in significant numbers on the Falkland Islands, and it was here that Mark and his wife Jane based themselves.
We were there for 5 months, just me and Jane, living there with those animals. I mean, it was just, it's a fantastic experience. The Johnny Rook, they're the most amazing birds I've ever seen, in a way, because they're completely curious. They don't have any fear of mankind at all. From a filming point of view, it's an absolute joy. You can walk anywhere in this amazing landscape and look around and think, all I need to have is an animal in there. And you turn around and there's 6 of them behind you, just dying to get into the shot. We really loved working around them, but at the same time, they would destroy anything that you left out. Every day, before you left the camp, you had to secure everything. You had to take every little thing inside, zip it up, secure all the guy ropes, because when you left, they would just come and try and destroy your camp. Their strategy for survival is investigate everything. There might just be a meal in it for them.
Some birds have more conventional strategies for survival. Every winter, tens of thousands of these barnacle geese fly south from the cold Arctic to spend it here at Loch Gruinart on the island of Islay in Scotland. The drama of the birds taking flight in the early morning requires John to be constantly vigilant.
We went quite early, but it's just so spectacular. You never know quite what's going to happen. Flying birds are quite difficult to film. They move very quickly. They're moving in 3 dimensions, so you have to keep focusing. I have to keep them in focus all the time. Meanwhile, you're trying to keep them in frame. You're trying to make the composition nice. There's a lot going on, and it is quite hard. It does take a lot of practice. There's a lot of tension actually when you're here, because what I have to do is I creep in the dark. I have to not disturb the geese. I have to wear dark gloves so that my hands aren't bright. I have to creep the camera just above the level of this bank here so that the geese can't see me. And as the light comes up, you never really know quite what's going to be there. It's just great. It's just so exciting.
These geese winter on a peaceful RSPB nature reserve. But you don't always have to travel to wild locations to get the best shots of birds. Sometimes it can happen in the most unexpected of places.
I was trying to make a short film about kestrels. And I particularly wanted to film a kestrel hovering in slow motion. And actually, it turned out the best place to get at the eye level of a kestrel hovering, rather than looking up all the time, was on a motorway bridge. The kestrel was just hovering there with its eyes absolutely fixed on the mouse, completely focused. It could have been hanging on a string. It was as though it was fixed in space. Its wings and its tail doing all their work, which you could see really clearly. It was a picture I was particularly proud of, actually. It was something that showed very precisely what kestrels can do in among all this man-made chaos of the motorway.
This uncanny ability to spot beauty in unnatural environments was a valuable skill for John on one particular trip to Delhi to film black kites.
I'd never been to India before, so I was really excited when I was asked to go and film something in India. What they didn't tell me was that the very first thing on my first day in India was to go to this massive dump outside Delhi. In that chaotic, stinking, rotten environment, there's food, mainly bits of meat from slaughterhouses. The kites are instantly focused on that place. All these kites in slow motion, just streaming in, picking up stuff and flying off again, chasing each other, was spectacular. It was one of the most strong experiences I think I've ever had. We had to take a change of clothes and throw away the clothes that we were wearing because they were so disgusting afterwards, and boots and everything. I thought I'd be filming the Taj Mahal or something, and I was on this huge rubbish dump, but it was, memorable.
Mark has had to endure some aromatic environments of his own to get the shots he needed. No more so than when he was trying to film white-bellied eagles catching fruit bats deep in the Australian outback.
We got in there, and of course, like everything, you get there, and the reality is pretty, different to what you imagined it would be. And you've got this hawthorn scrub, which is about 20 foot high, and you're walking through it, and there's a constant backlit drizzle of bat urine coming down. So you're just basically surrounded in this sort of scummy mess for most of the day. And not only that, it's really ugly because it's just hawthorn scrub the whole time. So you can get close-up shots of the bats, but there's no way you can ever see any eagle doing anything. You looked at it and you thought, how on earth are we going to ever film this?
The solution was to build 4 tall scaffolding towers so Mark could be closer to the eagles. He and the producer had to build them at night to avoid scaring the bats away.
It was the most amazing thing. 30 foot up this scaffolding tower in moonlight with the starlight, and occasionally little bats flying around and desperately trying to, fix these things together.
Despite the testing conditions, Mark was able to capture these spectacular shots.
The end result was just great. We managed to get, that shot, the eagle coming straight towards the tower, picks up this bat, gets it in its talons and goes off again. So it was kind of worth it in the end.
Filming the wildlife in our skies from above the ground is one thing, but filming birds from below ground level is another matter altogether.
I think one of the strangest things I've been asked to do was to film in what they call the shallow grave at an RSPB reserve in Norfolk called Snettisham, which is a really special place, actually. It's an absolutely wonderful place.
Metisham is the scene of one of Britain's greatest wildlife spectacles.
The Wash, which is a huge area of mudflats and estuary, fills up with water, and there are a huge number of wading birds that feed on the mud when the tide's out, especially knot. If you looked at a knot, you would say it was a medium-sized, greyish, fairly nondescript bird, but when they gather together, they're just sensational.
John was looking for a new approach to film the knots, one which would give him a unique angle. His shallow grave would do just that.
If you dig a hole in the beach and put the camera in the hole and lie down, which is very uncomfortable and difficult, then you're at the eye level of the birds, which is about that high off the ground. And that view transforms things completely. Well, it's 4:15. I'm in the shallow grave. I've got 8 layers of clothes on, 2 layers of plywood, and half an inch of gravel. Hope it's worth it.
It certainly was.
Hides are brilliant because when you're in a hide, you're not a person anymore, particularly lying down in a hide like that on a beach. As far as the birds are concerned, there's no person there at all. So they just came in and landed all around me. They were a touching distance away, completely oblivious. And that's just such a special experience. It's so rare to have that happen. And then, of course, the view from it, the patterns that they made, the way that they shift around, it's almost like a liquid flowing over the beach.
Birds are easily scared, so hides are invaluable when filming them. They allow cameramen to secretly capture their most intimate moments. A hide helped Mark become the first cameraman ever to document in detail a rare Scottish bird of prey, the sea eagle.
It was 1994-95, and there was only 10 pairs of seagulls nesting in Scotland then. And so the big challenge really was the pressure involved, because we'd got permission to do that after a lot of work. And so it was quite stressful because we really couldn't afford to mess up.
To add to the pressure, Mark could only set up his hide when the parents were away from the nest hunting. Otherwise, he risked scaring the eagles off the nest completely.
You only had 20 minutes to go in, put the hide in and get out again. Then it came to the time for filming, where you've got to go in for the first day and sit in there. So you go in there very early morning. I was sat there for the whole day in the worst cloud of midges I've ever seen. And you're sat there as quiet as you can. And you've got the camera and you've got this little opening with the lens poking through. Suddenly, bang, right on the nest, you've got this huge sea eagle. It was the most amazing feeling because it feels as though she's looking right at you, and so you're just sat there, you're almost unable to breathe because you feel that if you make any movement at all, she's going to find you. They're looking straight at a reflection of them in the lens, and if they make a movement or you move the camera, they see it. Over 3 hours or something like that, she eventually got used to the whole thing, and then she would start to feed the chick. Sometimes you know that what you've got is great. All that time you've spent is kind of worthwhile, and you get an amazing shot.
Filming birds close up requires a huge amount of patience and skill, and the results are often very striking. But the patterns big groups of birds paint over the sky's canvas can be equally mesmerizing. This memorable sequence came when John filmed a flock of starlings with fellow bird lover Bill Oddie by the River Severn in Gloucestershire.
You couldn't choreograph a show better than the starlings do it. They just come in loosely and they start to fly a little bit. And more come, and then you get a really big flock comes. And eventually you end up with 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 all in one place. And then they start these incredible evolutions, these shapes. It's like some other creature that's just morphing in space. It's almost like some mathematical thing. Excitement of them, of that show coming together and then ending so beautifully when they spiral down and they drop down into the reed bed and the show's finished. And you know that's it. It has to be the end of the film. It has to be the end of what the starlings have done. It just worked perfectly.
The patterns of nature are a trademark of John's work. Back home in Scotland, John explains how he captures these beautiful patterns.
These are lapwings. And what's so special about this is that lapwings have become really rare in Britain recently, and there are hundreds there. So there's this beautiful flock now. Two flocks really, a big flock of lapwings and a small flock, which have just merged. And the colours are just coming up in the sky. And there's drifting pattern of lapwings against it. I'm really looking for how they fit in the larger picture. So the frame moves all the time. I'm following the flock around. I'm not really filming individual birds, but I'm trying to anticipate where the whole flock's going, so that the composition stays nice the entire time. It's quite a difficult thing to do because they're shifting themselves relative to each other and the flock compresses and expands all the time. I have to anticipate quite a lot. I get it wrong quite a lot as well, but when it works, you get a lovely sense of flow and of movement, which is something that's almost unique to birds really, this sense of how they use the space, how they're in this three-dimensional space. There aren't that many places that are as wild as this in terms of what lives here anymore. The west coast of Scotland, particularly in the islands like this, have got so much variety and natural habitat left that you do get these big flocks of birds like this, which you just don't get in many places any longer. There's a wonderful quality to the light in the west, I think, because there are big skies, it's open out in that direction. There's no light pollution, there's no town, there's nothing actually on the horizon really. As a photographer, it's a fantastic place to work. It's always inspiring.
Next time, our cameramen are in the oceans, sharing the water with sharks, filming flying fish, and the biggest animal in the world.
I've waited a long time to see a blue underwater, and that was just magic.